Late November 1993, Kensington Palace. Diana sat alone in her private sitting room. William and Harry were asleep upstairs. Charles was away, as usual. The palace was silent except for distant footsteps in corridors. Diana was reading when she heard it, a soft knock. Hesitant, almost apologetic. "Come in." The door opened slowly. Michael Harrison stood there. He'd worked at the palace for 23 years, senior household staff, trusted, discreet. But tonight he looked terrified. His hands were shaking. Diana set down her book. "Michael, are you all right?" He glanced down the corridor, checking if anyone was watching, then stepped inside, closed the door quietly. "Your Royal Highness, I need to show you something." He pulled a thin beige folder from inside his jacket, held it like it might explode. On the front, written in thick black marker, a single letter, D. "What is this?" Diana asked. Michael's voice was barely a whisper. "I was never here. You were never meant to see this, but you need to know what they're doing." He placed the folder on her desk, and before Diana could ask anything else, he was gone. Back door clicking shut, footsteps fading. Diana stared at the folder, her hands trembling as she reached for it. The letter D stared back at her. D for Diana. She opened it, and her world tilted. The first page was dated March 1991, a behavioral observation report. Diana read the opening lines. Subject demonstrates increasingly erratic emotional patterns. Observed crying in private quarters, 14:30, 16:1. Refused dinner, avoided staff interaction, noted unpredictable mood fluctuations. Diana remembered that day. March 1991, she just learned Charles was still seeing Camilla, had proof, photographs, phone records. She'd locked herself in her room and cried for 2 hours. Not because she was unstable, because her husband was cheating on her. But the report made it sound like a breakdown. Made her grief sound like madness. Diana felt cold. This wasn't a medical report. This was surveillance. She flipped to the next page. April 1991. Subject displayed agitation during breakfast, left food untouched, appeared exhausted, overheard arguing with staff about scheduling, behavior suggests emotional instability. Diana closed her eyes. April 1991, she'd been suffering from bulimia for years. Couldn't keep food down, was exhausted from lack of sleep, had argued with staff because they kept scheduling her for appearances she was too sick to attend. She wasn't unstable. She was ill. But no one asked why she was struggling. They just documented that she was. May 1991. Subject locked herself in bedroom for 3 hours, refused to see anyone including her sons. Staff concerned about maternal capacity. That entry made Diana's hands shake. May 1991, the day after Charles's birthday. He'd spent it with Camilla, come home smelling of her perfume. Diana had locked herself in her room not because she was rejecting her sons, but because she didn't want William and Harry to see her crying. Didn't want them to see their mother broken. She was trying to protect them, and someone documented it as neglect. Diana's hands were shaking now. Someone had been watching her, documenting her, recording her worst moments, her private pain, every tear, every bad day, every moment of weakness, all written down, cataloged, filed. She kept reading, page after page, months of entries. Subject appears withdrawn and depressed. Subject exhibited emotional outburst when questioned about schedule. Subject's behavior raising concerns regarding stability. Subject demonstrates pattern of isolation and mood instability. Diana realized she was crying, not from sadness, from rage. These reports made her sound insane, dangerous, unfit, but they were describing a woman going through hell, a woman trapped in a loveless marriage, a woman being monitored like a prisoner. She turned to the next section, and her breath stopped. The header read, Maternal Fitness Evaluation. Diana felt physically sick. The first document was an analysis of her parenting. Time spent with subjects William and Harry. Inconsistent. Subject often too emotionally depleted for extended interaction. Morning routine frequently disrupted by subject's mood. Concern. Emotional volatility may impact child development. Diana's vision blurred. They were questioning whether she was fit to be a mother. Her. The one person who loved William and Harry unconditionally, who fought every day to give them normalcy, who protected them from the coldness of royal life, and someone was building a case that she was too unstable to parent them. The next page was worse, a comparison chart. Left column, Diana, emotional, inconsistent, unstable. Right column, alternative care structures, stable, consistent, appropriate. Diana's hands clenched the paper. Alternative care structures. They were talking about taking her children away. She flipped faster now, desperate to understand. Found a section titled Media Management. Inside were schedules, dates circled in red. Diana scanned them with growing horror. June 12, 1992. Paparazzi notified. Hyde Park, 14 gangs. Diana with children. She remembered that day vividly. She'd taken William and Harry to the park for a rare private afternoon. Within 20 minutes, photographers swarmed them. Harry had cried. William had asked why they couldn't be left alone. Diana had assumed it was bad luck. Now she knew someone had called them, had told them exactly where she'd be, had used her children as props for manufactured chaos. September 3rd, 1992. Press tipped, Kensington departure 09:30, gym visit. That was the day she'd been photographed looking exhausted leaving the gym. The tabloids ran stories about her shocking weight loss and gaunt appearance. She'd been ambushed, cameras in her face before she could prepare, and someone had arranged it. October 18th, 1992. Increased media presence arranged. Restaurant visit with friend. Diana's breath caught. That was her lunch with Carolyn Bartholomew, one of her few remaining friends. The restaurant had been swarmed by photographers. Carolyn had been so upset she'd stopped meeting Diana in public. Diana had lost one of her closest friends that day because someone had weaponized the press against her. Next to each date, notes, results, subject visibly distressed, excellent documentation. Outcome, emotional reaction captured. Support narrative. Success, subject appears increasingly unstable in public. A handwritten note in the margin made her blood run cold. Increased media pressure accelerates emotional instability, useful for documentation purposes. Continue strategic deployment. Diana stared at those words. Strategic deployment. They were using the paparazzi as weapons, deliberately orchestrating harassment, timing it for maximum emotional impact, then documenting her distress as proof of instability. Diana felt like she couldn't breathe. Everything she'd suffered, every panic attack, every moment of despair, it had all been orchestrated, manufactured, weaponized against her. She kept reading through blurred vision, found medical documents, excerpts from her therapy sessions, taken completely out of context. Patient expresses feelings of worthlessness. Patient reports intrusive thoughts. Patient describes marriage as suffocating. These were fragments from healing conversations, private moments with her therapist, now twisted into evidence of mental instability. Diana read a note attached to the medical section. Psychiatric evaluation may be necessary if behavior continues. Documentation supports intervention if required. They wanted her to look broken, wanted evidence that she needed to be controlled, managed, possibly institutionalized, and they'd been building that evidence for years. Diana reached the final page, a single sheet. No date, no signatures, just a title that made her heart stop. Custody Review, Preliminary Options. Beneath it, a few typed lines. In consideration of documented emotional instability, preliminary review of custody arrangements may be warranted. Alternative care structures to be explored if current situation deemed detrimental to heir's welfare. Protective measures to be implemented if necessary. Diana dropped the paper, her whole body shaking. This wasn't just surveillance. This wasn't just documentation. This was a plan. Someone had considered taking William and Harry from her, had drafted a proposal, outlined options, created a framework for removing her sons. The document was never finalized, never filed, but it existed, and Diana was never supposed to know. She sat on the floor, clutching the file, crying. For the first time, she understood the full picture. She wasn't just being watched, she was being managed, shaped, broken down systematically, every bad day documented, every moment of weakness recorded, every tear cataloged as evidence. They were building a narrative. Diana is unstable. Diana is unfit. Diana is dangerous. And when the time came, when they needed to justify taking everything from her, they would have years of documentation to support it. The next morning, Diana tried to find Michael Harrison, the staff member who'd given her the file. She was told he'd been transferred. Effective immediately, no forwarding information. When she pressed for details, she was told, administrative reassignment, nothing to concern yourself with. Michael Harrison had risked his career to warn her, and now he was gone, erased, as if he'd never existed. Diana locked the file in her private safe, told no one about it, but it changed everything. She'd always known she was being watched, always felt the palace staff reporting on her, but she thought it was informal, gossip. Now she knew it was systematic, organized, deliberate. Someone high up had authorized this surveillance, had read these reports, had drafted that custody review. Someone wanted her broken, and when she broke, they wanted documentation proving she'd always been unstable. That narrative would protect them, would justify everything they'd done to her, would make her look like the problem. In January 1994, Diana made a decision. If they were going to write her story, she would write her own. If they were going to document her privately, she would speak publicly. That year, Diana began working with Andrew Morton on the book that would tell her truth. She started giving interviews, started speaking about her bulimia, her depression, her marriage. The palace was furious, called her unstable, attention-seeking, inappropriate. But Diana didn't care anymore. She'd seen the file. She knew they'd been calling her those things privately for years. Now she was just making sure the public heard her version too. File D became her secret motivation. Every time she wanted to stay silent, to be obedient, she remembered those pages. Remembered the custody review. Remembered that someone had considered taking her children. And she spoke louder. In 2003, 6 years after Diana's death, her private possessions were being catalogued. A palace staff member found a beige folder in her safe, marked with a single letter, D. When they read the contents, they were horrified. Years of surveillance, medical breaches, custody threats. The documents were quietly removed, filed away in royal archives with restricted access. The official reason given, personal medical information, privacy protected. But people who saw that file before it disappeared said it told a different story. It showed that Diana's paranoia wasn't paranoia. Her fears about being watched, documented, controlled, all justified. The palace had been building a case against her, slowly, methodically, for years. And if she'd ever become too problematic, too outspoken, too threatening to the institution, they had everything they needed to declare her unfit. To take her children, to lock her away, to erase her completely. Michael Harrison, the staff member who gave Diana the file, was never seen at any royal residence again. He retired quietly, moved to Scotland, refused all interview requests for the rest of his life. But in 2019, shortly before he died at 83, he gave one brief statement to a journalist. I worked for the royal family for 23 years. I saw many things I was told to ignore, but when I saw that file, I couldn't stay silent. Diana deserved to know she wasn't crazy. She was right to be afraid. They were documenting her like a psychiatric patient, building evidence to use against her. I gave her that file because someone needed to tell her the truth. She was never paranoid. She was in danger. Late November 1993, a terrified staff member knocked on Diana's door, handed her a file marked D, whispered, "You were never meant to see this." Inside were years of surveillance, behavioral reports, maternal fitness evaluations, paparazzi tip schedules, medical breaches, and a draft proposal for custody review. Diana read it all and understood finally that she wasn't losing her mind. The palace was trying to make her look like she was, documenting every breakdown they caused, recording every tear they created, building evidence to justify taking everything from her. File D was never meant to exist, was never supposed to leave the archives, was never supposed to reach Diana's hands. But it did. And when she saw those pages, when she read that custody review, when she understood the systematic surveillance, Diana stopped being afraid. She got angry, and she started fighting back. Some secrets are kept in vaults. Some truths are buried in archives. Some files are marked with a single letter. And sometimes, someone brave enough breaks the rules and makes sure the truth gets out. File D changed everything. Not because of what it revealed about Diana, but because of what it revealed about the people who were supposed to protect her, but were actually building the case to destroy her.